Mariella, the perfect woman with a beauty that can make the whole city of Manila look up to her. But that beauty does not only come from nature. Behind the perfect shell is a secret that no one expected until she lay dead cold in a luxury hotel room. Joaquin, a powerful businessman and a family man, a man who was obsessed with perfection, suddenly disappeared soon after. Did she die for love, for money, or for something even more terrifying? When the door of the case opened, each layer of secrets was revealed one by one. This murder is not only a story about a wrong love affair, but also a journey to find the harsh truth about deadly perfection. Mariella, the girl with perfect beauty, radiant like a proud rose in the glittering upper-class world of the Philippines. No one knows that her enchanting beauty was not given by God. Mariella has undergone countless surgeries to transform from a poor girl into a symbol that every man desires. Behind her perfect smile and luxurious life, she is hiding a dark past. Every stitch on her body is not only exchanged with blood and tears, but also a painful journey to have the life she always dreamed of. But can this perfection last forever, or will it all collapse one day when the secret is exposed? The story takes place in one of the largest and most vibrant cities in the Philippines, where Mariella and Joaquin meet at a warish party of the upper class. Joaquin, a powerful and wealthy businessman, is captivated by Mariella's hot and seductive beauty from the very first moment. His eyes cannot take their eyes off her, as if every line on her body is created to fascinate anyone who sees it. Mariella's beauty is so perfect that Joaquin cannot stop himself from wanting to discover everything about this woman. However, there is something about Mariella that Joaquin cannot recognize. There was a mystery in her eyes, in that charming smile, as if she was hiding a secret that no one could touch. Joaquin, fascinated by that radiant appearance, quickly approached Mariella and began to seduce her to become his lover. Faced with Joaquin's promises of power and material things, Mariella could not resist the temptation and accepted to enter this wrong relationship. Although she clearly understood the risks on the path she chose, the allure of a luxurious life was too great for her to refuse. Joaquin was a successful businessman, 10 years older than Mariella, holding both power and wealth. However, behind the facade of a model family man, Joaquin always craved extramarital pleasures. To him, women were just pastimes, ornaments for a luxurious life. Joaquin was obsessed with natural perfection, and the beauty of women was something he worshipped but also exploited. He was not looking for love, just physical perfection. Each of his lovers must be a symbol of flawless beauty, like living statues created to satisfy his personal passions. Joaquin's promiscuous nature and violent habits made him see the women in his life as tools to satisfy his needs, and whenever that perfection was broken, he did not hesitate to expose his brutal nature. At first, the relationship between Mariella and Joaquin was filled with attraction and passion. Joaquin, fascinated by Mariella's flawless beauty and charm, relentlessly pursued her with expensive gifts and promises of a lavish life. For Mariella, Joaquin represented power and wealth, things she had longed for. Every time they met, Joaquin's eyes could not leave every line of her face and body, making Mariella feel like she was the center of the world. At first, there were only passionate glances and secret meetings in luxurious places between them. Joaquin did everything he could to pamper Mariella, turning every moment they spent together into a show of seduction and romance. Mariella was drawn into the materialistic whirlpool and fake sweetness that Joaquin brought, not expecting that those promises would quickly turn into gilded cages full of traps. But at that time, neither of them cared. They were just absorbed in enjoying the joy and passion that this relationship brought, regardless of the boundaries of morality or truth. At first, Joaquin treated Mariella like a goddess, sweet pampering and showering her with money and power. But after a short time, things gradually changed. The expensive gifts and promises of a luxurious life were now just a cover to hide the truth about his true self. Joaquin did not love her. He only saw Mariella as a tool to satisfy his lust and control. Under the elegant appearance of a successful businessman, he was a violent man, always trying to dominate her both physically and mentally. Joaquin demanded that Mariella submit to his every wish, not only in their relationship but also in their daily life. The initial romantic encounters quickly turned into violent moments as Joaquin began to show his true nature. Mariella soon realized the danger Joaquin was in, but she knew she was too deep into this relationship. She was trapped in the gilded cage he had built for her, where money and power were her bonds. Escaping Joaquin would mean giving up everything she had fought for, a life of luxury she could never have achieved on her own. Joaquin used his power to control Mariella, and she had no way to escape. Every time Joaquin became violent, she could only endure it silently, reassuring herself that she would overcome it if she continued to hold on to this life of luxury. But deep down, Mariella lived in fear. She knew that Joaquin worshipped natural perfection, and if he discovered the secret about her body, that her breasts were silicone, his rage would be uncontrollable. This truth was something Mariella kept hidden, not only from Joaquin but from the entire high society in which she lived. She knew that if this secret were revealed, Joaquin would consider it an unforgivable betrayal. And given his violent nature, Mariella feared that she would not be able to escape that rage. Every time Joaquin touched her body, Mariella couldn't help but tremble, not because of pleasure but because of the fear that any moment the secret could be exposed. As time passed, Joaquin's signs of violence became more and more obvious. Beatings and threats became a daily part of their relationship. Joaquin no longer hid his brutal nature. For him, Mariella was now just a tool to satisfy his needs, and whenever she failed to satisfy him, punishment would come immediately. Mariella knew she was in too deep. Although she wanted to escape this violent relationship, she could do nothing but continue to endure. Every time she thought of leaving Joaquin, the image of the poor life she had lived would appear, pushing her into a spiral of resignation and pain. That night, the luxurious hotel room was bathed in the soft light from the bedside lamp. Joaquin lay next to Mariella. The dreamy feeling of a passionate night enveloped him, but there was something that kept him from completely relaxing. Mariella was too perfect. From her skin to her seductive curves, everything seemed meticulously carved. However, when Joaquin touched Mariella's chest, a strange feeling made him pause. It was not like the previous times, not as soft and natural as he had imagined. That unusual feeling gradually sobered him, and the suspicion that had been simmering for so long began to rise. Joaquin sat up, his eyes fixed on Mariella. He gently placed his hand on her chest again, but this time he felt something more distinct than he had ever noticed before. Every detail of her body, which he had once worshipped, was now overshadowed by a sense of deception. His doubts began to turn to anger. What he had thought was perfection was now a lie. Joaquin suddenly understood that the beauty he had long been obsessed with was actually a false shell. Anger flared up inside Joaquin, strong and uncontrollable. For him, this was not just a deception of appearance, but a betrayal of everything he had worshipped. The natural perfection he had always obsessed with was distorted before his eyes. Emotions rose to the point that Joaquin could not control himself. Anger engulfed him like a raging fire. He could no longer maintain his composure. No longer the gentle gestures like before. Joaquin now rushed at Mariella with uncontrollable force. He grabbed her, yanked her off the bed, causing Mariella to lose her balance and fall to the floor. There was no time to resist or defend. Mariella was overwhelmed by his brute force. In a fit of rage, Joaquin reached for the metal nightlight beside the bed. Without thinking, he slammed the lamp down on Mariella's head. The sound of metal colliding with her body created a horrifying dry sound. The blow was so strong that Mariella collapsed to the floor. Blood began to flow from the wound. The crimson blood flowed onto the cold tiled floor, creating a gruesome scene in the middle of the luxurious room. Joaquin did not stop there. His rage was like a storm that could not be extinguished. He continued to smash the lamp on Mariella's body. Each blow seemed to release all the pent-up rage. Each time his hand swung, the lamp came down with more and more brutal force. He no longer cared about the consequences, no longer saw the woman he once worshipped. Before his eyes now was only a distorted image of betrayal. Mariella, in her final moments, tried to raise her weak hands to shield herself, but to no avail. Each blow fell like a brutal wave, washing away the last bit of hope she had left to survive. She felt the intense pain from the wound on her head. More blood flowed out. Her breathing became weaker. With no strength left to resist, Mariella felt the coldness of death approaching. The hotel room, once a scene of passion, had now become the scene of a horrific crime. Joaquin, in his rage, was no longer the calm and charming man Mariella had known. Brutality had taken over him completely. He continued to beat, even as Mariella lay motionless on the floor, her body now a frail, lifeless silhouette. In the silence that followed the storm of rage, Joaquin stopped. He looked down at Mariella's body, now motionless. Her blood was spreading across the floor, each drop creating a horrifying crimson streak. He stood there, breathing heavily, unable to recognize himself. The rage was over, but the consequences were permanent. In a luxurious hotel, a horrifying event occurred. On the floor of the room, Mariella lay motionless, a fatally torch coast thread slowly spread across the cold surface of the room. The pale yellow light reflected on the bloodstains, creating a horrifying scene that completely contrasted with the elegant space of the hotel. The nightlight, the object that had become the murder weapon, was still lying around near her body. Traces of the violent attack were clearly visible on the ground, and the objects were disturbed. There was no life in Mariella's body. She died on the spot from severe trauma. Joaquin's attack did not leave her any chance. From the first blow, it was clear she was no longer able to resist. Then, the consecutive blows fell as if to completely destroy Mariella's slender body. Blood from the wound flowed everywhere. The hotel room had now become a crime scene, with every trace of blood and trace a possible clue to the crime that had just occurred. Joaquin didn't hesitate after realizing what he had done. He stood up, stepping over Mariella's body in a hurry. He had no specific plan. He just knew he had to leave the scene. No one in the hotel knew what had happened, and Joaquin knew he needed to take advantage of the silence to escape. He quickly put his clothes back on, not caring about his button shirt or his shoes not being tied properly. The door to the room was opened hastily, without any attempt to erase the evidence of the attack. Joaquin didn't look back at Mariella again, didn't check to see if she was really dead. The only thing he could think of at that moment was to leave this room before anyone found out. Then he walked quickly into the hallway, trying to keep his pace normal. The hotel hallway was long and quiet. No one was there to witness his appearance. The traces of his crimes were now beyond his mind. His footsteps took him through the hallways, the elevators, and finally to the lobby. Joaquin did not stop to check out, nor did he interact with any staff. Everything was done in silence, as if he had never been there. Outside the hotel, Joaquin quickly blended into the crowd on the street. The city was bustling as usual, unaware that inside a luxurious hotel room, a murder had just occurred. Joaquin left the scene, leaving nothing but a trail of blood and a body behind. No one paid any attention to him as he walked away, hiding from the consequences of his actions. A few hours after Joaquin left the hotel, the guest had not left the room, and there was no sign of the room. The housekeeping staff noticed something unusual. According to the schedule, guests usually checked out or requested room service at this time. However, Mariela's room door was still silent. The staff knocked on the door several times, but there was no response. Feeling a little worried, the staff used a spare key to open the door. As soon as the door opened, a chaotic scene appeared before their eyes. In the middle of the luxurious room, Mariella lay motionless on the floor. Blood from her head and body flowed all over the floor, forming a large pool of blood. The staff could not believe what they were witnessing. The furniture in the room was broken. The chairs, tables, and night lights were in disarray, as if a fierce struggle had just taken place. The staff immediately closed the door and ran to the front desk to report to the hotel manager. The hotel manager, after hearing about the horrifying situation, quickly called the police. They did not dare to touch anything in the room to ensure that they would not disturb the scene. Only a few minutes later, the police arrived at the hotel, preparing to examine the crime scene. When the police arrived at the scene, they immediately realized the brutality of the crime. The room was completely in disarray, no longer maintaining the usual order of a luxury hotel. Furniture was broken, blood stains spread from the bed to the floor. The broken night light lying next to Mariella's body was undeniable evidence that she had been attacked with a heavy object. Blood stains were scattered all over the room, a sign of a violent attack. The police examined Mariella's body. On her body, they discovered many bruises and obvious signs of violence, especially on her arms and head. In particular, the fatal head wound was the result of a severe blow caused by a broken nightlight. This completely ruled out the possibility of an accident. Other signs showed that Mariella had tried to resist before collapsing, but she was not strong enough to escape this brutal attack. The initial clues clearly point to a murder. The police collect evidence at the scene, from fingerprints on the nightlight, blood stains, and footprints on the floor. They know that something terrible has happened in this room, and now it's time to find the culprit. The hotel manager and housekeeping staff are interviewed by the police, providing information about Mariella and the people who have been in contact with her in the past few days. The investigation has officially begun, and the hotel room is no longer a place for romantic encounters, but the scene of a mysterious murder. After the police arrive at the scene and confirm the murder, they immediately begin the process of collecting information from the hotel staff. When asked about Mariella and the people involved, the receptionist provides information about the person who was with her, a man named Joaquin, who had checked into the hotel under his real identity. Joaquin was not a stranger to the hotel, but what caught the police's attention was the fact that Joaquin left the hotel without checking out, and without making any announcement after he left. The hotel's security cameras became an important piece of evidence. Through the video, the police clearly recorded Joaquin and Mariella entering the hotel room together on a luxurious evening, holding hands like any other couple. However, subsequent images showed Joaquin leaving the room early the next morning, hurriedly and alone. There was no sign of Mariella following. It was this anomaly that aroused the police's suspicion, especially when they discovered Mariella's body just a few hours later. The police continued to conduct a more thorough investigation of the crime scene. They quickly found Joaquin's fingerprints on many objects in the room, especially on the nightstand lamp, the object that became the murder weapon. The nightstand lamp was shattered, and Joaquin's fingerprints were one of the important clues that helped confirm his direct involvement in the attack. In addition, biological evidence also played an indispensable role in the investigation. Joaquin's DNA was found on Mariella's body, confirming that the two had close contact before the incident. From blood samples, hair, and dead skin cells, the police quickly confirmed that Joaquin was the last person with Mariella before she was killed. These signs, combined with the statements from hotel staff and security camera images, created a clearer picture of Joaquin's crime. After identifying Joaquin as the prime suspect, the police immediately launched a manhunt. They quickly collected information about the credit card transactions that Joaquin used after leaving the hotel, tracing his every move. Security cameras at multiple locations showed that Joaquin had moved through many areas of the city before he intended to flee. With the data from the credit card and security cameras, the police were able to determine Joaquin's itinerary. He had used the card to buy a plane ticket and was apparently preparing to leave the Philippines in an attempt to escape responsibility. However, the police acted quickly. When Joaquin arrived at the international airport, he was arrested at the security checkpoint before he could board his flight. The manhunt for Joaquin was successful, and he was brought back to face serious charges. Mariella's murder not only ends with Joaquin's arrest, but also reveals many dark secrets behind the lavish and fake life they both led. When Joaquin was arrested, he was quickly taken into an interrogation room. At first, Joaquin remained silent, but when the police presented him with undeniable evidence from security cameras, fingerprints, and DNA, his composure began to crumble. Joaquin could not deny the compelling evidence. The police showed him images of him and Mariella entering the room together, and then Joaquin leaving alone. The fingerprints on the nightlight, his DNA on Mariella's body, all pointed to one undeniable truth: he was the killer. With no way out, Joaquin faced the harsh truth. His obsession with perfect beauty drove him to commit a terrible crime. In court, Joaquin could not deny any of the evidence. The security footage, fingerprints, and forensic reports were all clear. Joaquin listened silently to the accusations, while Mariella's family sat there, their pain palpable. Each piece of evidence made Joaquin realize that it was not just his obsession with beauty that drove him to kill Mariella, but that he had destroyed his own life. No more power, no more control, only destruction. At the end of the trial, Joaquin was sentenced to life in prison. No chance of parole. He left the courtroom handcuffed, now criminal in the eyes of everyone. Joaquin's life, once a symbol of power and control, was now completely shattered. Everything he had built collapsed in the moment he killed Mariella. Now, his life would be filled with long days of punishment.